Hello and welcome to this video on metabolizing alcohol. This is a topic that may be of greater interest to you if forced family time over Christmas seems relatable. Ethanol is the primary alcohol we will focus on in this video, but the same enzymes will act on many other alcohols as well. Ethanol, of course, being the alcohol found in beer, wine, spirits, and other safe-to-drink alcoholic beverages. This is a mild narcotic that reduces inhibitions, interferes with decision-making and coordination. If it was not removed from the body, or at least converted into a less active form, then the body would struggle to clear it for a very long time and there would be some rather serious repercussions. This problem is reflected in alcohol poisoning, a very large dose, a long time to clear, and a prospective death. Alcohol is distributed throughout the body based on water content. More water means more alcohol. The diffusion of alcohol into the tissue is dependent on blood supply. More blood supply, the quicker the tissue becomes saturated with alcohol. However, alcohol will not dissolve in fat or adipose tissue. This means cells and other tissues that are lipid-rich will not have a high alcohol concentration. This leads to a difference in how much alcohol is needed to saturate different parts of the body. Before alcohol gets into your plasma to be spread around the body, it needs to be absorbed. Alcohol will cross various biological membranes via diffusion. It simply moves from a high concentration gradient to a low concentration gradient. This means the more you consume, the more will enter into your bloodstream. And the more you have in your intestine at one time, the more rapid that absorption will be. If you are in an otherwise relaxed state, which is generally caused by alcohol, efficient blood flow will improve removal of alcohol from the intestine into the bloodstream. Better blood flow, better absorption. Alcohol does have certain properties that can cause issues around the blood flow in the body, particularly at high concentrations. In some cases, it can cause paralysis of stomach smooth muscle cells, and these will in turn lead to a reduction in alcohol absorption. There are also issues to do with hemorrhage and interference with blood clotting factors. The most alcohol will be absorbed if it is ingested as a single large dose. Think of shots, rather than a number of much smaller doses, for example, drinking individual servings of beer. This is largely a combination of the factors regarding concentration gradients and the effect it has on the body's attempt to stop absorption. There is a certain benefit to be had in the amount of food consumed when drinking, as increased absorption of alcohol will occur when the body thinks it has low supplies of sugar or caloric intake. That's the general principle behind absorption of alcohol from your intestine into the bloodstream. Before it can even get that far, alcohol will begin in your stomach, and here it may be susceptible to first-pass metabolism. First-pass metabolism is a process by which the body begins to break down various different things, primarily thinking about drugs in this case. Alcohol is going to be affected by something called alcohol dehydrogenase, or ADH. This will oxidize the alcohol. This in turn will reduce the amount that's absorbed into your intestines. From the stomach, it's emptied into the small intestine in the duodenum. Intestinal absorption is the primary means by which alcohol will be absorbed. From the intestine, which has a very large blood supply, your blood carries the alcohol to the liver. The liver is the first place where your body attempts to do something about the alcohol that you have consumed. Alongside the ADH, cytochrome P450 is responsible for metabolizing alcohol and turning it into a more inert form that can be disposed of. This occurs primarily in the hepatocytes of your liver. These are the working cells of the liver. ADH is by itself an interesting enzyme. It's a zinc-containing enzymes that have two units. These take alcohol and oxidize it. The advantages of ADH over other methods available in the human body is that it has a much broader array of substrates that it can bind to. That lack of extreme specificity means that it can work on alcohols that aren't limited to just ethanol. ADH is primarily found in the liver. Although there is a certain amount secreted into the GI tract, you can also find it in the kidneys. There are other locations as well, but for when it comes to metabolism of alcohol, these are the primary organs you need to look at. The way ADH works is that there is both ADH and ALDH. These undergo the chemical process seen here, and that creates NADH. This is then broken down further by the mitochondria, and we'll discuss that shortly. After you manage to break it down, you eventually create molecular oxygen, and this binds to hydrogen protons. This in turn creates water. The problem you'll find is that unless you have enough oxygen available to support this process, you're going to wind up depriving hepatocytes further away from the blood supply of the necessary oxygen to do their job. This may leave them in a state of hypoxia, which can then lead to cell damage. P450 is a little bit different. This is still an enzyme, but instead of working directly on the alcohol, it begins by using steroids and fatty acids. Cytochrome P450 is primarily found in the endoplasmic reticulum. This is the area where proteins are modified. You'll also find them in the mitochondria. These enzymes work in conjunction with others to produce NADPH cytochrome P450 reductase. There are other isoforms as well, and there are about 100 different genes that are all related to the function of the cytochromes. These then in turn, with the other various enzymes and activity involved, oxidize alcohol. Much like the ADH, they turn it into acetylaldehyde. Cytochrome P450 is useful in that, much like ADH, it doesn't exactly have specificity, and so it can oxidize various other alcohols than just ethanol. It's generally held that you can consume 2 standard servings of alcohol and then 1 every hour thereafter, and more or less clear everything except 1 drink from your body per an hour, having almost no alcohol present at the end. That's a generally held belief. The average metabolic capacity is between 170 to 240 grams per day for a person with a body weight of 70 kilograms, roughly 7 grams an hour. This is only 1 drink per an hour, and so based on your local laws when it comes to alcohol by volume in your blood, that may or may not be legal. If you are consuming more than that 1 standard drink per an hour, this is where you're going to get into trouble. The various enzymes can work to start breaking it down and turning it into something else via metabolism. This is nearly always acetylaldehyde. The more alcohol you consume, the more it will be absorbed, and the more products you will make. The challenge you will find is that acetylaldehyde in particular can cause harm to cells other than those in the liver, which would suffer from hypoxia. You have proteins found in the membranes of red blood cells. You have various lipoproteins, and these are a part of the fat component that often lead to an increase in heart disease. Tubulin, a major protein in cell structures. Hemoglobin, which is essential for red blood cells to be able to perform their job of carrying oxygen around. Albumin, the main protein in blood. This can be responsible for all manner of different functions. Collagen, the major protein found in all connective tissue, and the cytochrome enzymes themselves. We've mentioned how both cytochrome P450 and ADH are located slightly differently. Despite this, both of them can be found within the cytosol. Here, they turn alcohol into acetaldehyde. The acetaldehyde then needs to be further metabolized in the mitochondria. The mitochondria uses another enzyme. It is, rather unimaginably named, acetaldehyde dehydrogenase. This produces acetate. Acetate can be excreted in either urine or in feces, but in feces it needs to be bound to a protein carrier molecule. There are a variety of ADH gene variants. These are then coupled with varying degrees of activity. For example, ADH1B occurs with differing frequencies in various populations. The first form is predominantly found in Caucasian and Black populations. The second variant is more common in Chinese and Japanese populations. There's also a surprising prevalence in Jewish people. ADH1C1 and ADH1C2 appear in roughly equal proportions in the Caucasian populations. The ADH1B2 allele appears to show slightly higher alcohol elimination propensities than those with the ADH1B1 variant, but is slightly more common in Jewish people. This explains some of the variability across different populations for their tolerance for alcohol. Some can clear it more effectively, whilst others may struggle to do so. Along with the ADH, there are things like the cytochrome P450 that would play into this. There are also other genes that complicate the picture even further. Consider the cheap date gene, which leaves someone at much greater propensity for becoming inebriated more easily. As you can see, clearing alcohol from the body is important. It is a process in which the body has multiple redundant mechanisms by which to do it. This has several steps to ensure the body can effectively and mostly safely remove alcohol. That's because all alcohol is toxic at even moderate levels, but this is damage that can be fixed given time. The problem is when there is repeated high-dose administration of alcohol. That can lead to organ damage. This is a phenomenon most often seen with liver disease or cirrhosis. That's because the body becomes damaged and does not have the opportunity to replace damaged cells, but instead fills that location with scar tissue. Of course, we've mentioned how alcohol can affect other mechanisms within the body that can lead to an increased risk of things like cardiovascular disease as well. Thank you for watching this video. If you have found it interesting, consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. Please post any comments, questions, or suggestions you have below.